You're on 94.9. It is 17 minutes past 4 and it's Tuesday afternoon. That means it's time for Creation Ministries International. And this afternoon we have Dr. John in the studio. Good afternoon, Dr. John.
Good afternoon, Mick.
It's always great to have you in here, Dr. John. Of course, people can go to creation.com if they have any questions, but it's always better if they send them through while we're having a chat and we can answer those questions on air straight away. All you've got to do is text us on 0401 949 949. And of course, that's what we're doing here. We're answering your questions and talking about recent media. And Dr. John, I've got to ask a question because I saw something in the media and I thought, wow, I reckon you'll like this one. It was, the headline was, "Scientists calculate humanity's end date with 95% certainty." Did you see that story?
I did, Mick, and thank you for sending it through to me too. I mean, look, it is a good example of something that we've talked about on the program quite a few times. If you think about it, research scientists are usually employed by universities, and universities traditionally have been research places. You know, they come up with ideas and they research them, and but they've got to come up with ideas that are going to either generate income or keep employed the people who are doing the research. And because scientists have got to live, and so they think up all of these projects that they're going to research, and they've got to be a bit catchy because they need the sponsorship for their research. And so here's one. I mean, it sounds fantastic, doesn't it? They're
95% accuracy.
Absolutely. You know, gee, I'd really like to know that. And the other thing is, if they can get it published in a reputable journal, then, you know, it becomes literature that can be referred to for years.
Yep.
Anyway, the 95% certainty that they came up with is that humanity is going to survive for only another 17,100 years.
That's accurate. I mean, that's fairly specific.
95% certainty, 17,100 years. Now, I don't think you and I should lose a lot of sleep over that, Mick, because we probably won't be around.
So many people read these headlines. All they read is their headline, and then when they see, you know, those numbers like 17,100 years, and they see it's 95% certain, and this is a fairly major news sort of website, msn.com. You sort of go, okay, it's got to be accurate, doesn't it?
And published in the Scientific American, which is a pretty well-known journal.
Yep.
But they did make some amazing claims, Mick. One of them was that they figured that roughly 117 billion people have already lived on Earth. Now, that's a lot of people, and you don't need to look very far to know that that is just a ridiculous claim. Right? 117 billion. And it just flies in the face of what we know about human populations. Now, if we go to another fairly reputable source like the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Encyclopedia Britannica figured that the world population at the time of Christ was about 300 million. You know, that's not a lot, you know, 300 million. I mean, these people are talking about 117 billion people have already lived on Earth.
Yep.
Now, here Encyclopedia Britannica says that the world population at the time of Jesus was only 300 million. And it seems that right up until the Industrial Revolution in about 1750, the population had only increased to about 800 million because they'd had Black Death and, you know, plagues and all this sort of stuff and lots of wars and so on that kept the population down.
Yep.
And it wasn't until the year 1800 that the first billion people were, the population reached 1 billion for the first time.
Yep.
Right? Now, bear in mind, these people have said 117 billion have already lived on Earth.
Yep.
And yet the world population didn't reach 1 billion until 1800.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about 1930 that it reached the 2 billion mark. Then it hit 3 billion by 1960, then 4 billion by 74, 5 billion in 1990, 6 billion in 1999, 7 in 2011, and it's only a couple of years ago that it reached 8. Now, bear in mind, you can't add all those figures together because if we go back...
well, I was one of them in most of those.
That's right. You know, we were both alive in, say, 1960. Were you?
Not quite, no.
Not quite for you. Okay, well, I was, and there were 3 billion then. So a lot of those people are still included in the 8 billion that we've got now.
Yep.
So, you know, you just can't quite do it like that. And actually, there are more people alive today than have ever lived on Earth.
Yep.
Forget about that 117 billion that they're talking about. There's more people alive today than have ever lived on Earth. And a lot of people think that 8 billion is far too many and they'd like to reduce the world's population. But they even in the days when it was less than 2 billion, they still thought the world was overpopulated, right? There's a lady, we've probably mentioned her on the program before, by the name of Margaret Sanger. Now, Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, and I think she, in about 1916, which is long before the 2 billion was reached, she thought there were far too many people on Earth, and she formed an organisation called Planned Parenthood. Now, does that name ring a bell?
Yep.
Yeah, well, Planned Parenthood in the US is the major provider of abortion clinics, right? And so she formed that in 1916 when the world population was less than 2 billion.
Wow.
So she thought even then that there were far too many people on planet Earth. And, of course, if you look at population figures, and you compare that with average growth rates, it actually fits very well with a starting population of 8 people only about 4,500 years ago. If you look at the rates of population increase since then, you find that if you plot a curve, it very, very, very closely fits those figures that I've talked about. And the reason why we're going not at a greater rate, at a greater number of people on Earth, is because if you have an average growth rate and you plot a mathematical curve, it follows an exponential curve. So we're on the upswing of the exponential curve, which is why the number of people seems to be increasing quite dramatically, but it's not as if the rate is actually increasing. Right?
Yeah, well, we've actually sat here before and talked about how from Adam and Eve getting to where we are today with population growth is almost perfect. It's like
that's right. It absolutely fits the curve with the numbers that we already know. But if we go back to that story, he's assuming, and I think he assumes that we'll reach about 2.3 trillion population in 70,100 years.
From now,
but, yeah. But look, there's a couple of other points that I'd like to make about that, and we'll do that when we come back.
All right, awesome. You're with Dr. John from Creation Ministries International. We'll be coming back shortly. It is 27 minutes past 4. Good afternoon. You're on 94.9. It's 21 minutes to 5. And we're with Dr. John from Creation Ministries International this afternoon. Hey, if you have any questions, please send them through to our text line. Just SMS 0401 949 949. Now, this afternoon, we've been talking about a headline that came out in some fairly major news last week. Scientists calculate humanity's end date with 95% certainty. And, hey, their figures sound accurate because they've got, numbers like 117 billion, and then they talk about 2.31 trillion or so, 2.34 trillion people at the day that we all finish, and the fact that it even says 95% accuracy, I'm wondering what the whole 95% is based on. Dr. John, this kind of reminds me of a lot of other stories that we've talked about in the past that go the other way, where they talk about sort of where we came from, how old we are, and sort of, how we've been here for billions of years, or the Earth's been here billions of years. Well, now they're projecting forward with 95% accuracy, and it sounds just as rubbish to me.
Mick, it absolutely is. And it wasn't just us at Creation Ministries that thought it was ridiculous. There was a lot of secular criticism came in as well, because how can you talk about 95% certainty when you're talking about 17,000 years? Now, if you think
17,100.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I've got to get it accurate. But if you think about humanity now in the last 100 years, or even in the last 20 years, the advances, and it's assuming that humanity doesn't expand beyond Earth. Right, for a start. Now, you would reckon within the next 100 years or so, there's pretty certain to be some little colony started on the moon, and Elon Musk is talking about colonising Mars, and he's expecting to do that in his lifetime.
Yep.
Right, so, if you go 100 years into the future, just imagine what might have happened in that time.
Yep.
And what about in 17,100 years?
Yes.
It really is ridiculous to say that you can have 95% certainty about something like that when you really don't know what humanity is going to come up with.
Yep.
But even if you go back to the other figure, Mick, the 117 billion that he said is the number of people that have lived on Earth.
Yep.
Now, we say at Creation Ministries that's just ridiculous. Population growth rates show that the 8 billion we've got now is probably more than have ever lived on Earth.
Yep.
But if you allow for a moment his 117 billion, you've got to then ask the question is, where are all the bodies, right? Because evolutionists, let's say, they believe that modern humans evolved a couple of 100,000 years ago. And we know from the early humans that we would acknowledge existed since the flood, right? That the earliest people we know of were burying their dead.
Yep.
And quite frequently, they did it not just with the bodies, but they did it with all sorts of artifacts, people's shields and armour and that sort of thing got buried with them. If you think about the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, Tutankhamun and the other pharaohs that were buried there, look what they were buried with. I mean, there was a huge amount of stuff that they got buried with. So even if the bodies had somehow disappeared and hadn't been mummified and had rotted away, where are all the artifacts that they were buried with? Because they wouldn't rot away.
Yep.
So it really doesn't make sense. There simply isn't any evidence for that sort of number of people. And the trouble with articles like this is that they get into the scientific literature, and even more of the outrageous ones that we've talked about on this program, they get into the scientific literature and then they get referred to for years down the track. You know, people are able to quote this investigation and that investigation that have occurred. And really you find that it's all, what it's all doing is it's increasing the secularization, if I can call it that, of research scientists. No wonder they don't they have difficulty in embracing the Christian chronology, because they've had all of this stuff fed into them, and all the people who go and do scientific courses at university get fed with all of this secular nonsense that really is unproven. And when they graduate, they eventually take positions in the universities, and so it perpetuates the idea that scientists at universities won't really have a bar of Christian beliefs. And they then start to be critical of the Christian scientists and say, oh, you know, they're not genuine scientists. Well, when you look at the credentials of the people who are Creation Ministries supporters, they're not lightweights in the science field. You know, they are absolute leaders in their profession. I mean, we've talked about somebody like Ron Neller, who's been on this program several times, the geomorphologist. I mean, he is regarded as the world authority in that area. You know, he's not just a secondary type person in it. He would be the person that everybody in the world regards as the foremost authority in this. You take somebody like Mark Harwood, for example, and we've had Mark on the program many times. Mark was responsible for putting up the Optus communication satellites. You know, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. You know, he's not just somebody who's been scratching around with a pen and paper at university. He's really been working in the scientific field in a very, very big way. And there are so many others like that in the who are attached to Creation Ministries one way or another. So really, I think it's just a shame that the universities get full of these people who denigrate organisations like Creation Ministries, and yet the credentials of our scientists are so much better than theirs. Stories like this, I mean, yes, we see it going both ways, whether it's into the past or into the future. So many numbers are made up, yet they tell us how accurate they are, but really I didn't see anything in there that showed any evidence of anything other than just a story. Well, that's right, Mick. And when you look at it, the Bible is a written record of the history of the world. And I mean, when you look at the genealogies going in Luke's Gospel, for example, all the way from Adam to Jesus, then and naming the people, you know, I don't think you can go past the Bible. And certainly in this program, we're absolutely convinced that the biblical chronology and time frame is absolutely true. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. John. Another awesome week. You're on 94.9. Hey, if you have any questions, send them through to us, 0401 949 949 for next time round. Or, of course, you can go to creation.com. They've got thousands of pages of information in there. You just type questions up the top and your answers will pop out down below. You are on 94.9. It is 12 minutes to 5. Thank you again, Dr. John. Yeah, thank you, Mick. We'll see you again next time round. We've got a few different speakers before you come back. And, I'm looking forward to it already.